to Buffett and Beyond, the future of value investing. I'm Betty Lou. Warren Buffett has made an art form out of value investing, buying stocks that are undervalued and holding them for the long term. He honed his craft right here at Columbia Business School in New York City, learning from legendary investors Benjamin Graham and David Dodd. Today, Buffett has legions of followers. But what does it mean to be a value investor in this age of Buffett? And how has the financial crisis changed the future of value investing? So value investors,
I put those questions to a panel of experts. Bruce Greenwald of Columbia Business School's Heilbron Center for Graham and Dodd Investing, Bob Olstein of Olstein Capital Management, Tom Russo of Gardner, Russo & Gardner, and David Winters of Wintergreen Advisors. Our audience was made up of the next generation of value investors, a current crop of Columbia MBAs.
Thank God for the last year, because of course what happened is value investors stayed the course. We did not have a Great Depression, which I don't think was ever on the cards. And I think if you look at the performance over the crisis, that those principles of buying companies that in the long run will produce returns for investors. And I think for everybody on the panel, most of the impairment has largely been made good. And I think, if anything, it's validated those principles, which is you buy a good business that in normal circumstances is going to do well at a good price, you will do fine as long as the world doesn't change.
But that was the problem.
Right.
Normal.
Right.
We were in abnormal in the last 18 months.
Well, I think we thought so much more than we actually were. And I think that's the lesson. And I think everybody on this panel did not panic.
I can only talk about the mistake my firm made. After Bear Stearns was saved, and basically the equity guys were the ones that got hit, we concluded when the banks started getting destroyed, and Citibank went in half, and Morgan Stanley went in half, we went in and we looked at Citibank and we saw the reserves had moved from 1% to 4%, abnormal, never reached that part, and then all of a sudden, Lehman fails. And when Lehman fails, that changed the ballgame. We were going into deleveraging. The assets weren't marked right. All of these banks had to raise capital in order to survive and to meet capital ratios. And as a result, the values were marked down a lot. But when we saw that life has changed, value investors have to admit when they make a mistake, you run for the exit. You don't change your scenario. We were able to sell everything the day after Lehman and find that the atmosphere and environment had changed, and we were able to take that cash that we were able to raise and find values in companies like Procter & Gamble and Coca-Cola.
You know, value investing has changed. If you hear Berkshire describe it today, I think it's most expressed in his reference to the Aesop's fable, that it's as simple as a bird in the hand versus two in the bush. It's as simple as that, and it's as hard as that. Because it is, in fact, extremely hard to know how many birds you're going to get in the bush. It's even harder to know when you're going to get them. And that's the art of forecasting. And the business of early Graham and Dodd, which was net working capital discounts to liquidation value, unfortunately didn't allow for the one thing to take place, which is compounding based on better business's ability to reinvest. The willingness to reinvest requires a certain type of management, but if you can find one that has great businesses, strong balance sheet, an orientation towards the shareholder, and a willingness to invest the income statement against future growth, you can harness something like Buffett did in Coke and have a very long investment horizon, even after you might quadruple your money, as he probably has done in Coke.
You're always buying future returns when you buy a stock. The question is how you measure them. So when you see a return today that you think you want to buy, the fundamental question is how long is it going to last? You can see the birds in the bush. The question is how many are going to die before you get to eat them and go bad. And so the issue has always been that value investors have focused on is the permanence of the returns. To Ben Graham, that was asset protection. That for a business to be viable, if it needed assets, it had to earn a return on those assets, or nobody was going to invest and the industry was going to die. That's why he focused on assets. But what Buffett taught people is that beyond assets, earnings are sustainable if you have barriers to competition.
But I think what's changed is the idea that, you know, you really have to focus on, you know, the underlying business. How well does the business do? And also, what's changed from Buffett and the world in which we've grown up in, to a large extent, is it's become a global game. And I think that that's a significant change. And for us at Wintergreen, you know, we're searching all over the planet trying to find great deals. And that's, I think, a significant
Well, how does
evolution.
the global part of it change? How does that complicate the situation for you?
Well, I think the world is now very integrated. And, you know, this idea that things aren't correlated, you know, when everything crashed. And what Bob was talking about was how the most liquid stocks were what, and securities, except for treasuries, that's what everybody ran to or sold. And so I think that now what happens here affects what happens everywhere. And, you know, it also creates a opportunity set that's so much greater. Because it used to be, you know, it was the New York Stock Exchange or the over-the-counter market. And today it's everywhere.
Coming up,
I was really shocked by that deal.
our panel weighs in on Warren Buffett's biggest deal ever, Berkshire Hathaway's blockbuster acquisition of Burlington Northern Railway. As Wall Street sputtered in 2008 and 2009 and companies faltered, value investors went hunting for bargains. I asked our panelists to rank their best value plays of the past 18 months.
We bought a lot of Intel right back about a year and a half ago, and here's a company that has always had high returns. They've always had a net cash balance. They have always spent tremendous amounts of money on R&D and have always stayed in a liquid situation. And